Hi there, welcome back to my channel. This week we're going to be talking about winter in Southern California and what to expect and how to prepare for it accordingly, what to pack and what conditions you can expect in these kinds of weather. So one of the biggest changes during the winter time versus the summertime in most places with waves is the swell size tends to be bigger and larger, which can be great if you're an experienced surfer, but if you're a beginner surfer, you should try to look for spots that match your skill level accordingly. Here in Southern California, there's spots that are beginner friendly, there's spots that are for more advanced surfers, especially if they have a shallow reef, and there's some spots that are kind of in between in the middle. So you should make sure that you do your research before you go to any beach. Also, some of the beaches here have a great amount of beach area for your kids to hang out on if you're bringing them with you, and some of them it's very small, the beach, if sometimes not at all. So it's important to know what to expect with the beach that you're going to be going to surf at as a mom, especially if you're bringing your kids with you. Some spots you can check out as a parent is San Onofre. It is a state beach, so you have to pay a fee, but there usually is a beach area. The only thing to consider with that is that it is a kind of rocky break versus a sandy bottom, which can be a little tricky walking out and paddling out with your fins. So just keep that in mind for San Onofre. Another spot that is really fun, and it can be more of an advanced spot, but on smaller swell days it's really fun for beginners, and that is Oceanside. There's breaks at the harbor and at the pier and all along the coast there, but again, you'll want to do some research because some of those spots, depending on the tides, will either be very short breaky or will be totally mushed out and very difficult to catch any waves. Another really fun spot that I was surfing when I was very beginning is Tourmaline or Pacific Beach. Mission Beach is a little bit more short breaky, so I don't know if I'd recommend that as a beginner spot, but just a little bit north on the coast is Pacific Beach, and that spot tends to have slower, mushier waves most of the time. And there's also a lot of beach there for your kids to run around and play and enjoy time at the beach as well, so I'd highly recommend that spot. One of the other really big changes that is very obvious but should be noted between summer and winter surfing is the water is much colder. Not only is the air colder, but the water is colder, and often it can be stormier and windier in the winter time. So it's really important that you have a wetsuit and maybe even booties or gloves if you feel like you need them, and a hood. At the bare minimum, you should have a 4-3 wetsuit for the dead of winter like we're in right now, and a hood because it helps keep a lot of that heat that goes out your head from doing that, and it keeps it more warm in your core. And when your core is warm, I've learned this firsthand, the rest of your body, especially your extremities, are a lot warmer because the blood can flow better throughout your body. So I'd highly recommend a 4-3 wetsuit and a hood at the minimum, and then booties are also really helpful when it's cold out or windy to just keep you a little extra warmer when you're out in the water or walking to and from your car. Also, if your kids are tagging along with you, it's really important that you pack lots of layers, and even maybe more layers than you think you'll actually need, because it'd be a lot better to have too many clothes and coats and socks and shoes than not enough. And especially if your kids love the water, they're probably going to get in it and then be wet and cold. So it's really important to bring extra clothes and extra changes of clothes for your children. Hats, gloves, socks, shoes, an extra outfit. Don't forget to pack extra clothes for them because it will be chilly, and the last thing you need is to cut your session short because your kids are too cold for you to be out in the water surfing. The last thing I want to talk about is safety during the wintertime can be a little bit trickier. Not that it's necessarily dangerous to be surfing in the wintertime, but there's a lot more things you have to be mindful of in the bigger swells and waves of winter that are not as much of a problem in the summertime. So the waves themselves, obviously, like I said, are going to be much bigger. The swell sizes are going to be much bigger. And if it's a really big day out, the last thing you need to do is paddle out, especially as a beginner, because it's just going to scare you and you're not going to have much fun, and you're probably just going to be stuck on the inside and frustrated by the end of it. So the best time to go out as a beginner is in between those bigger swells when it's a little smaller and more manageable, and you can actually paddle out and catch some really fun waves. The other thing I would say is make sure you're keeping an eye on the wind. we've had a lot of really high winds here in San Diego, and it's just been making the waves and the water very choppy. And I went out the other day with my husband, and it just was a pretty blah session. It happens. Sometimes you just have those and you just got to move on from it. But I knew it was going to be windy, and I kind of expected it to be a little bit messy. My husband had a lot of fun, but I was basically stuck on the inside for most of the session. So just keep in mind the wind, the tides, and the swell all work together. And you can find a lot of this information on websites like Surfline or other surfing forecasting websites, and it just gives you an idea of whether or not it's actually worth your time to go out or bring your kids all the way out to the beach, and just making sure that you actually are able to learn and have a fun time out in the water. Another thing to keep in mind is that rip currents, so the currents can pull you out to sea or either left or right on the beach depending on how the water is moving, and it can just be really frustrating because you might end up spending a lot of time paddling to get back into the spot you want to be where the waves are breaking best, or it can be a little scary where you start getting pulled out to sea. And it's really important that you know how to conduct yourself in a rip current. I discussed this in a video, I'll link it above, about surf safety and staying safe out in the water. I also have, I think it's either in that video or another video on surf etiquette. And that's another thing that is really important with some of these bigger waves, colder conditions, and often in the wintertime there's a lot more experienced surfers out in the water trying to get those really fun winter waves. And so it's really important that you know surf etiquette and how to conduct yourself out in the water so you and everyone else still stays safe and has a great time out in the ocean. Another thing that can be really helpful when you are bringing your kids to the beach, especially if the beach is kind of bigger like Pacific Beach or Oceanside, it's really important to set down some ground rules with your kids and have a trusted adult to supervise them while you're surfing out in the water. That way they know that they can't just go run off to the rocks or all the way down the beach. Some of that's just going to happen because they're kids, but it's helpful if you can set some of those ground rules of don't go in the water without one of us coming with you, etc., etc. It kind of gives them an idea of what to expect and just clarifies how to keep them safe and what they should expect from going to the beach. So I just wanted to touch a little bit on the surfing culture in the wintertime, especially here in Southern California, but most places in general. Like I said before, it tends to be a lot more experienced surfers are out in the water during wintertime. Some of this is just because the waves are better in some ways for more experienced surfers, but some of this is also just you don't have as many beginners who are fair weather surfers out in the water, which can be nice because then there's often less crowds. Unless there's a really big swell coming in, then everyone and their dog is out in the water. But that can be kind of nice actually for learning how to surf in the winter. But it's just good, like I've been saying, to keep in mind that when it says it's 5 to 6 feet surf, that's not a good time as a beginner actually to go out and learn how to surf unless you're just catching whitewash. Then it can be really good because there's a lot of power behind it, but you should not be paddling out into the lineup when the surf is really big because it'll just scare you and make it dangerous for you and others around you. One thing that's been actually kind of fun about winter surfing, and some of this might be because I've been going early in the mornings a lot because that's what works with my schedule with my son, and it's really nice when you go to a spot consistently. There's a lot of people that are usually very friendly, and there's just a lot of camaraderie with showing up every day or every couple days and seeing each other and cheering each other on out in the water. And you see each other more often because there's less people out in the water. So that can be a lot of fun in the wintertime, having some of those people, especially for some reason I found that the older long-time surfers tend to be really friendly and just fun to be around, encouraging. They have a lot of helpful tips and they're just really great vibe to be around. So I think that's one thing that's really nice about surfing in the winter is, you know, the people that are there because they want to be there despite the fact that it's cold, and they're really inspired and they just love surfing, and often they want to share that with you. So as I was mentioning, one tip kind of to try to find time for surfing as a mom during the winter is trying to find ways that you can maybe have someone watch your kids during the day, or go while they're at school, or the most likely and feasible one for me is just to get up early in the morning, try to get out right at sunrise, and then come back. Usually I get back around 8, which is around the time a lot of kids go to school. So either you could maybe work it out with your partner that you guys go surfing, alternating early in the morning, and then drop the kids off to school and go to work, or just try to find a way to make it work, because it is a little trickier in the winter time versus the summertime when there's longer hours and more daylight. But if you want to make it work, you'll find a way. And as I've mentioned before on this channel, there is nothing like the feeling of catching your first wave and just the thrill of accomplishing the task of standing up on your board and learning how to surf. It's so much fun, and it's worth the difficulty and the struggles that you have to overcome. Surfing in the wintertime in California can be a lot of fun, especially as you're moving forward from that beginner experience and learning how to surf a little bit bigger waves. It can be a lot of fun to have some of those clean conditions from the wind and the swells. So it's definitely worth trying to take advantage of this time. So with a little planning, the right gear, and some family-friendly spots, it's very doable to learn how to surf or continue learning how to surf as a mom in the winter time. If you liked this video, please be sure to subscribe down below for more videos on surfing moms or surfing tips in general. I also really appreciate it if you would be able to like the video down below if you found it helpful, and comment down below, is there anything specifically that you're struggling with or you'd like more advice on, either as a mother or as a surfer or as both. I'd love to share my tips with you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.